Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of the Fear and Terror podcast. Today, I will be your host. I am no pun intended, and I am joined by BigJimmyHD,
How's it going?
Epic Sax Guy,
Hello.
and Kilrim.
Hello.
And today, we are going to be going over what's called the Book of Records. It's a little pet project that Epic Sax Guy started a while back, and I'm going to hand it off to him to let him explain exactly what it is and what gave him the idea to start it in the first place.
So I started the Book of Record. Well, first of all, the Book of Records is just the history of fear and terror, from what I know and what I've been told by uh, more OG members. I started it because in staff general, someone at some point is like, "Oh, we should keep track of all this stuff," and then lo and behold, I made the Book of Records.
All right. So basically, it was just like a thing that you're like, well, nobody else is, so fuck it, I'll do it.
Pretty much.
So in the book of records, how did you decide how to split it up? Because I'm looking at it right now, and you have a bunch of different eras. So how did you decide on those eras and how to split it up? Um, just for everybody that's listening, the eras are the pre-dawn of FaT, the dawn of FaT, the era of the Great Merger, the era of expansion, and the era of the COVID-19 pandemic.
So I broke them down into those sections. For the first two, it was a little more tricky. The Dawn of Fat was easy. It's when Jimmy made the Discord, and the Pre-Dawn was the before, the backstory. Era of Great Merger, that era starts when the Box Boys and the BLT guys merged into Fat. And then Era of Expansion, I was kind of trying to figure out where I wanted to start that, and I figured a good place to start it is when we started expanding into other games on a much larger scale. And I ended up starting January of 19 when we went into War of Rights. And then Convid was pretty easy. Pandemic hit, activity dropped, and I was like, new era.
All right. I guess those eras make sense. So, starting it off, it's the era of the pre-dawn of FaT, which I'm going to hand that one off to Big Jimmy because he's the only one here that knows anything about that. Basically, that's how did you get the idea for Fear and Terror, and what made you want to make the clan?
So there was a couple things. I mean, I've been in multiple groups. I've ran multiple groups before. Some have been fairly successful, some haven't, and I've kind of learned from basically from failures and experiences that what works. And the main thing was we started as a squad group, so I was playing a lot of squad, and I actually was a part of a group called Squad Ops, and I was really involved with their creation. I didn't necessarily want to be a part of like the active staff team, but I really like kind of the planning stages and the development side of the beginning. And I saw how from them, even though we are, if you look at their group and our group, we're very different. But basically the idea was planted in my head from being with them. And then eventually I met a guy named El Ramsey in a game, and he was like talking about a group. He's like, "Does anyone want to start one?" And I was kicking the idea around in my head. I was like, "Sure, why not?" And we started a group actually before. So our day, I guess in here it's called the Dawn of FAT. It's an amazing name, but we started in December of 2017, like kind of like towards the end, like around Christmas. And the truth is with Ramsey is that I put a ton of time into the group in terms of recruiting and building the infrastructure and really planning, and I didn't really feel like that energy was being 100% met. So respectively, we kind of split off. I took the name FAT, and then I moved to another Discord, and that's whenever the start of FAT happened. But yeah, I mean, and that was kind of what kicked it off. There's more of someone planting the idea in my head, me already being excited for it, and yeah, that's where it began from there.
All right. So was it you that came up with the name Fear and Terror, or how did you guys come up with that name of Fear and Terror?
So it was actually Ramsey was the one who put out the name, or kind of like put out a list of names. So we were both kicking ideas around, we were brainstorming, and whenever you brainstorm for a clan, what I would always do is name and tag. And I think, I don't know. I like it's stupid. We get people that join our clan now because or join our Discord because like our discord.gg/FaT. It's kind of funny. It's stupid, honestly, but I like it because the name doesn't necessarily like. I hate milsim groups. I don't hate milsim groups. Like if someone else is a part of one, I think that's great. But I don't identify with that. I've never served, so I'm not a fan of like the
Yeah.
28th or
Yeah,
whatever, or
and you didn't want a tag that had the numbers in it, basically.
yeah, and it's one of those things. Like I think it was a good job of representing our group. Is it kind of is a name that's not too serious. It's not, like in terms of the infrastructure and the work we put into FAT. We're serious and 100% all in, but we don't take ourselves super seriously. And I feel like FAT and Fear and Terror kind of, it did a good job of kind of creating those letters. I fell in love with the tag first, and then the name Fear and Terror kind of fell into place, and I was like, all right, let's
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So after you got the Discord and everything and figured that out, and we call this era the dawn of FAT, which we consider starting January 1st of 2018 was like the official quote unquote start day of Fear and Terror. That's when it became a thing. And you I know that you had a lot of people that were, or not a lot, but you had a few people that were with you from the beginning, such as like Bios. I know that he has been here for a while. So, uh, going into that, how many of the people that you started out with right in the first like month or two would you say are still here and still active in either active in the clan or active in staff teams from the people that helped you start it?
Yeah, I would say a good amount. I mean, it's one of those things where with every clan, and I mean, when people, I feel like it's something that I underestimated whenever creating a clan long term. I thought that the way the personnel, the way the member base moves is it's kind of like the way I describe it, at least, is how I would have described it at the time, would be kind of like a river entering a lake. It just keeps on getting bigger and there's really no outflow. And it's just like as you recruit people, you consistently build a player base. And while that main fact is true, the realistic factor is that people leave a clan as well. Either they have like stuff going on, they might identify better with a different group, they might just stop playing games in general. There's a million reasons why people would leave a group. So what with a group, it is a constant inflow and outflow. And if a group is growing, you have more inflow obviously than outflow. And throughout, that's happened a lot. If you took a screenshot of the player base from, I don't know, mid 2018 that we'll talk about a little bit later, you'll notice a lot of different names and a lot of new people. But that first period that you mentioned has been like huge. Like there was a lot of people. Like the first guy we ever recruited, Turtle Soup, he's no longer in the clan. But Bios was in that group. Sarge Foster, we'll hear about later down, starting a division. There's been a lot of key members, and there's names I'm leaving out because there's a good amount of them that were involved and understood my vision starting out at the beginning, and that have grown with the group and have really kind of developed into, formulating a deep relationship and bond to FAT as we move forward. But yeah, I'd say that percentage of the earlier group is a lot higher in terms of retention versus, I don't know, like the beginning of 2019. Just because it's it's a lot. I feel like it's a more of an emotional attachment. You kind of feel, you can see the group expand, see this idiot named Jimmy actually kind of his shit actually work out, which
Yeah.
FAT worked out way better than I thought it ever would. So I feel
Yeah,
like
hell,
that kind of fosters.
we're recording a podcast right now, so obviously it worked out.
Yeah, I mean, if someone told me we'd be having 4,500 members in our Discord, in terms of like just users in our Discord, we have the amount of divisions we do, the amount of like we have a podcast, I would be like, that's the most corporate shit. There's no way we're gonna get that. But you know, as you grow, you just kind of get to a certain point and you look back, and which I think is actually the awesome part of this episode. This is just a
Yeah.
look back in terms of how far we've came, because there's been some huge moments. I'm actually excited to talk about those.
Yeah,
But
because in previous, like, there is some stuff that we're gonna talk about that we have talked about in previous episodes, but this episode is really just to get it all out there, and here's the history and how we got to where we are. Um,
oh yeah, absolutely. And then also, I know like we're in this discussion together, Sax, but like, thank you so much for doing this, creating a book of records, because that wasn't some shit I did. That wasn't anything that like any of us really thought of until you started pouring time into it. And when like
mhm.
as gradually as things happen, it's really nice to have
Yeah,
this as a reference point.
I don't remember who suggested it. I believe it was Jay, maybe someone had
Who
suggested it
knows?
in staff
Because
because they're like, we should keep track of all this crap that we do.
yeah, because it was so long ago when you started. I want to say it was late 2018 that you started the book.
Yeah, I did. It was late 2018.
So yeah, it was a while ago.
This is a lot of scrolling to get all that in there.
So talking about that main group still though, how big do you think the clan was? Because the next era is the era of the Great Merger. How big was the clan before the merger? Because I know that the merger really sparked a huge growth in the clan, but before that happened, how many members do you think you had or we had?
So, to be honest, I could throw out numbers. I could say 50. I could say maybe 100. I mean, it's really up in the air in terms of number, but I can't say percentage base. Is the era we're currently discussing, dawn of FAT, really kind of like the first grinding part, is whenever you start a clan, we really had to build and just recruit and consistently play and get. Unfortunately, I was like a part of my life where I could do that, and like I had an amazing staff team to help me build, in the early days. And then once we got to that point right before the Great Merger, which is in around August of 2018, is our group essentially. I don't know if we tripled in size. I would say we tripled in size because we ended up merging with two amazing groups that have like really, and I think that's when FaT became FaT. I mean, we became
Mhm.
technically FAT whenever we were in January of 2018 when we like came over and switched into our own official Discord. But really, whenever the culture got grounded and like the two groups breakout, which Kilrim brought in, who's joined with us today, and BLT, who was led by F Monk and Pox. It really, that's one of our groups. We made up like third. Whenever both of them joined, we made up like a third of the group. So it was a really big moment, really pivotal, and in terms of our group becoming our own.
Oh, all right. Yeah, because I knew because when I joined, it was literally like the same week as the Great Merger, or maybe a couple days afterwards, and I knew that around that time we had 100 members, or maybe a little over 100. I just didn't know how many we had beforehand. So,
Yeah, I would
uh,
say 50 to 100 somehow. I mean, I would safe bet 75. Like, we would make up in terms of like, what that would actually look like in terms of activity. Is we'd have about 10 to 15 people in our squad channels because we were a squad only group back then.
mhm. Well, that leads us into the next era, which is one of probably the best era in my opinion for FAT. Just the few months, even though it was a few months, it was really a good era. It's the era of the Great Merger, when Breakout and BLT merged into FAT, which we could start out with Breakout and actually we have people here from all three parts. We have Jimmy from FAT, we have Sax came with BLT, and then Kill came with Breakout. So, Kill, can you just describe for us what happened with you deciding to merge into FAT with Breakout?
So there were several factors that brought us in here. Um, let's see. I think the way we met Jimmy and FAT, I think it was shortly before the very beginning of the SCL tournament that Jimmy ended up creating. I think we met like, I don't know, 2-3 months before that in squad, and we really liked those guys. So we would always try to either we would, I would normally be leading squad, and we would coordinate with Jimmy because Jimmy was usually the one leading. But if anyone had FaT tags on, we were always trying to coordinate with them because we could really roll teams. So we really liked the cohesion. But on top of that, our old leader Ace, if you watched the episode before this, which is the Box Boys, um, we didn't really like how Ace was. I mean, I was the leader, but he wouldn't let me run the Discord how he needed. He would invite random people in the Discord for no reason, like just random people on Reddit that don't even play any in the games that we played at the time. So we were getting annoyed by that. And then near August 2018, maybe. So basically, when summer starts, like June, July, we were getting burned out with squad, and we started playing Tarkov more. And we had a good, I would probably say 80% of the guys were playing Tarkov instead of squad daily as the daily game, and then the other 20 were still playing squad. At the same time, I was also a manager in real life, and even though we were a squad only group at the time, I was still the only one leading squads and recruiting and doing everything on my own because I didn't have a good staff team, unlike Jimmy at that time. And I just got burned out. I was also a manager in real life at the time. So I would manage all day at work with babysit adults, but I'm being paid to do it, and then I'd come home and do it online with strangers for my leisure time, my hobby, and they're not listening to me, being disrespectful. Well, not being disrespectful as in calling me names or anything, but not listening to the orders I give as squad lead, because it's how you get anything done, right? For the people that play squad, that's how you get objectives taken, so you hold people back. But they just do whatever they want. So I was getting annoyed with that, and then finally Jimmy just was like, "Hey man, what is your long-term plan with this group?" And I just basically vented at him for a half hour, dude, I'm just done. I can't do this anymore. I know my squad guys that are only Willie Survive is one of my boys, and he, to this day, he still doesn't have Tarkov, and he still refuses to try it. And I knew Willie was leaving. Troy, there's a couple like 10 or less guys that just didn't like Tarkov, and I knew I was going to lose them if I didn't do something. So Jimmy reached out, talked with my guys. They agreed to make some policy changes in FaT that we really. Well, I was down to join even if all my guys said no. I mean, I even say it in the last podcast. They'll think I'm joking, but I was just done being the main leader, doing everything by myself. And yeah, they made some policy changes that good 15 people were hard nose, so they changed that, and then everyone voted yes unanimously. So then we came over and brought the Tarkov division and elevated FaT to a multi-game community.
Yeah, and actually, you talking about that made me think of something funny that you told me once. Was that Jimmy just passed his charisma checks?
Yeah, that's the joke. Is when Jimmy reached out to me, I failed my charisma check against him, so I had to merge. That's the joke.
Yeah. No, I think honestly, from at least from my perspective, is I just saw because it was really unique. I don't think that a double merger could ever work again. And I think it was one of those things that really kind of, because the
Just the
breakout in the
timing.
BLT. Oh, it was ridiculous. It was such a, and I think you said it yourself. It was the most exciting time for FAT in terms of growth because it was it was gigantic. We became the minority, original fat guys. So it was a huge merger, huge exciting time. And I think, at least from my perspective, Kilrim, I saw you guys playing on less and less. I was in your Discord. I saw less and less people playing, and I'm gonna be honest. I was in my head, I was kind of like poking, or I guess poking your brain a little bit in terms of what you wanted out of the group, so I could formulate a proposal. And it kind of just, I don't want to say it fell into my lap, but it worked perfectly. And the FAT guys already loved the breakout guys, and I like to think the same thing about the breakout guys love the FAT guys. And
Yeah.
it was a great moment, like that. Everything worked out. Everyone, was cool. We could secure. I saw it as like such a win-win, because usually whenever people merge, they see it as a lose-win. Because like you're losing that group's identity, you're merging into another group that's scary, different, all that. But with the merger, it allowed for the breakout guys who were starting to play Tarkov to still be close friends with the breakout guys who wanted to continue to play squad, but were being exhausted out of just pure logistical leadership issues.
Yeah. I remember the day you messaged me too, like I had a very shit day at work. Like it was one of the worst days of work. And then like I got home and I was like, fuck, here we go again at this unpaid second job. And then like before I even started like the first session of leading, because I would lead like daily for, let's see, I get home, Seattle traffic is terrible. So I get home like 4 or 5 o'clock after leaving at 2 p.m. because that's how bad the 5 curve traffic is for the people that live in that area. And I would lead for another 4 hours, 5. So like before the first session, I did like very long sessions every day for fucking 7 days a week,
Fuck
doing
that.
it by myself.
I can barely squad lead 4 games in a row.
Yeah,
4 quick
and
games.
that same day, like I had a shit day at work, and then just Jimmy, in his words, poking my brain, see what my long-term goals were, and I was just like, dude, fuck, I got it out. Essentially, is what I thought. I was like, hell yeah, I'm in.
So yeah, you were just excited to not have to be the main leader and babysit them.
Oh yeah, I was 100% in.
Oh. So yeah, that's half the merger. And then Sax, I know you weren't leadership, or at least I don't think you were leadership in BLT, but you were still there. Can you give us some background information on the BLT merger and how that how it happened on that end?
Yeah, so for BLT, we met a FaT member in, I believe it was a Total War server. And they were like, hey, we got our own server if you guys want to come play with us, because we had some good cohesion. We played with a few of their guys. They're like, come help us populate our server. We ended up doing that. We started playing with them a lot more. I don't know when Jimmy and F Monk started DMing each other, but I do know that F Monk wanted to get deep into competitive squad, and he couldn't really do that because we didn't have enough people. So I was probably in BLT for maybe 2 months, maybe less. And they're like, hey, we're having a meeting at this time. This guy from another clan's going to talk to us about a merger, and we're going to have a vote on it. So we go to the meeting. Jimmy comes in. Everyone's dead silent. And then we just listen to Jimmy tell us about his group, what Monk was wanting to do with the merger, with getting us over there. He wanted to start a competitive squad, which most of us were already down for. So we're like, hell yeah, comp squad, let's go. And then we merged into FaT, and here we are today. Not a lot of us from the BLT merger are still here, though. Very few.
Yeah. Isn't there some history about a group of you guys from a different clan actually merged into BLT, which merged into FAT? So you kind of had like your own type of double merger, real quick.
I had my own double merger. So I met Murder, Quavo, Monk, and Paladin Drake. Is probably before I even hit my first 50 hours in squad. They were like, hey, come play with us. We're in this group called 97th Combat Group. I was like, all right. So the guy in that group that was leading that, his name was Viper, I believe. He started not playing with us regularly. So Murder was like, let's find another group. Sure enough, he found Monk, and he's like, we're going to merge with these guys. So we ended up merging with them as in the 97th group for 3 months, and then as in BLT for a month or two, and then we went to FaT. So for me, it's just like transitions back to back.
Yeah. All right, I got to be honest with you guys. So 97 CG started playing on our server, FaT, whenever Monk started playing on our server, and like the BLT guys started playing. And I was trying to push for 97 CG moving into FaT. I mean, I ended up getting you in like this weird way.
You still got it.
Yeah, no, because I was playing with them, and I'm like, okay, these guys are awesome. Like, they're a blast to play with. They know what the fuck they're doing, and they're cool dudes. And I remember, so so I think everyone kind of got filtered in terms of the community, because the reason BLT started playing on our server a lot is because whenever FaT was the first, I don't know if we were the first out of the three, but at the time of the mergers, we definitely had our server. And of course our squad server. And I was talking to Monk one day, I'm like, hey, you guys are awesome. You can, you guys have permission to recruit for your clan anytime, because that was something that nobody allowed us to do on other Discord or on their other servers. So that really kind of solidified you guys coming in. And then eventually how it worked on our end is I did the same thing, because it worked. I didn't know what else to do. I started talking to F-Monk, and we ended up talking about Comp Squad, and then I eventually shot out the idea to him, and it ended up working and landing, because it was something, and it all happened in parallel. It was like the weirdest feeling. It was like this group changes all in like within a month.
Yeah,
but
Yeah.
a lot of shit went down in that month. I feel like we're taking a lot of time talking about it, but there was a lot of shit that went down in August of 2018.
Oh yeah, it was like in terms of growth, it was exponential that month. I mean, if you look at like, if it was a bar graph, it would be like that bar August would be fucking massive in terms of recruitment for FaT, because it was just such a crazy moment. And
well, there's another month coming up that Kill and I can talk about. There's a massive month for recruitment coming up, but that'll come up in a bit. But yeah, I remember like when I first joined, you were pretty much doing all of everything. Like for getting new recruits into the clan, they'd message you, and then you would like set them up with the recruit role, and then one of the other people would be able to bump them to regular or whatnot. But I remember like a month after I joined the ambassador team so that you could start spreading around all of the staff roles, and then you made a what's the team called? The Sax.
Ambassador?
No, that's the team that I was.
Personnel?
Personnel. You made the personnel
I
team.
don't want to talk about the personnel team.
Well, and then the other team that you made was the recruiters. So I remember that those were the first three like main staff teams that you made that had their own managers and whatnot. And it ended up being, I think, Puppet Dragon as the recruiter manager. Sax was personnel, and I was the ambassador manager. And I remember I think it was like September, so maybe a month or two, September or October that started. It's not written down, but it's something that I just remembered. And after that, just staff teams started popping up left and right. And what was that kind of liberating for you, Jimmy, to be able to trust people to let them have the staff team and let the clan start running itself instead of you having to babysit everything?
Oh yeah, no, it was huge, because doing everything for a clan is sustainable up to like 40 people, and I was already kind of pushing a little bit past that with where FaT was before the merger. Then once the merger came in, we tripled in size, so it was like, it was almost a cause and effect of, oh shit, it was great, because it worked out obviously, because once you get that massive influx of members, you also get you can pick the members to help lead the teams and take that weight off your shoulders. And I mean, that's something that we've had to do consistently, and that was like a consistent growth thing. Even long after the fact. I mean, we still have staff teams popping up, and because it's one of those things. Once you reach a certain scale, like if I were to right now run everything, FAT would be a nightmare. It would be
Yeah,
fucking terrible, just because
it
like
would
there's so
probably
much
be a
going
dead
on.
group by now.
Oh, for sure, and that's what happens to a lot of groups. I think a lot of clans, like for example, Kilrim situation. If you have a leadership position, I know that was influenced by another leader that wasn't necessarily the most positive force for the group, but it's not sustainable for a certain point, and a lot of people fail to realize that. A lot of people don't have the trust for, I guess, other people to help them with their job, which I don't understand at all. I think it's awesome that other people want to volunteer their time, and I still do because it's it's a necessity, and it's amazing that people want to help. Like
Yeah,
when
I'm
it comes
still
to
looking for 2 years of back paychecks, Jimmy.
me too, dude. I need to get there too. I'm broke as fuck. But yeah, man. I mean, it was crazy, and yeah, but it was a big time. Definitely a big time in our group.
Yeah, and then shortly after the merger, we expanded into 2 other games actually. So it went from July, or basically till the middle of August, we were a 1 game community, and by November we were a 4 game community when we expanded into War Thunder and Postscriptum. Uh, so for War Thunder, Uh, what was the do you remember what the decision making process by I actually for either of the games, what the decision making process was for, hey, let's start expanding into even more games?
Yeah. So basically, we have written down that we expanded into War Thunder, and that was led by Never Get the Suck, who's actually been featured on another podcast than myself. I don't know exactly which one. But he shot me a message. He was like, "Hey, I want to try War Thunder. I think your group has great like structural foundation, and I think it's a game that FT could excel in." And you know, it was great. I mean, for the time, it had a lot of activity, brought a lot of people in. Eventually, I don't want to jump ahead of the gun, but eventually it ended up not working just because War Thunder as a game, it leaned on the gameplay being grindy. And when it comes to long term strategy, that was a lesson that we learned that the games that we have in FAT can't be built upon the fact that its fundamental gameplay is grindy. And it really
Uh-huh.
burnt a lot of the staff members out. And we'll talk about it later. I'm not trying to jump ahead too much, but that's what happened with that. And then Postscriptum, actually, I think this is one bullet point, Sax, that got missed because it was before your time or it just got outdated. We actually had Postscriptum got started by a member called Smug Square, who was a part of FAT for I think like half of a month. He was really involved in recruiting community is really being built, and Postscriptum was coming up as a game in parallel to Squad, so it fit the mold very well in
I
terms of
think I
FAT. So
remember the
instantly,
name. I think
yeah,
I
no, he,
remember the name, but not very well. Like I wouldn't have been able to say the name if you asked me.
oh for sure. I mean, he's a great guy. I still keep in touch with him, but he just had some. He ended up ghosting us for like a month just because he had real life shit going on. I mean, that obviously takes precedence, but if you don't have a leader, then it's not going to necessarily work long term. And we ended up getting it. The division ended up getting passed into Sarge Foster, who was another one of our like first. I don't want to give a number because I might be wrong, but he was like first 10 FAT members. He was around forever, and I know he still pops in the Discord and says hey every now and then, but yeah, he started Postscript. He took over Postscriptum, and then we started growing it from there. And that was like a really big defining moment for at least November of 2018.
Yeah, and then your computer broke. And that
Yeah,
leads us to the next part, which is when you got pranked by a lot of the staff team. So, from your point of view, what went on or what went down with that prank?
okay, so I just want to say the best "you got me" moment of all time. Like, still shout out to the people that were involved. I wasn't even mad because I was so fucking impressed in how it was done. So, to provide some background context, I was playing. My computer has always had issues. It still has issues. I can't play Squad Tarkov or Postscriptum. It's fucking awful. And So my PC had an issue with, I believe it's CPU that I swapped out and ended up working. And the issue with that was I couldn't play squad. And at the time, before we had clan directors or clan leaders, those are eventually roles we had to make to accommodate the growth. It was just myself as the squad director, Kilrim as the Tarkov director, and then we had the other directors as well for Postscriptum and War Thunder. So I was the squad director still, and I couldn't play the game. And basically, Bios, Kilrim, Sax, who was joined with us today, as well as Kilrim, and then Jay, Opopin, and Murderfist, they came together, and I was at the gym, like literally like lifting in public, like not a place I know. I don't usually go on Discord in public just because I usually check messages. And they were in the conference room, and they're like, bro, you have to join. We have to talk about something super important. So I joined, and I'm like, hey, I'm on my phone at the gym. What's up? And then they go into a very serious, no bullshit discussion with me, basically saying that I should step down from the squad director position because I cannot play squad. And they brought up good fucking points too. And it wasn't like, it wasn't like, oh, you're fat, or like, oh, you're stupid, oh, you're can't. It was like, oh, you don't have the in-game presence to be a leader. We'd like you to step down. So it took me back. I was like, fuck. I was like, let me go to my car. So I ended up leaving. I think before, once you guys texted me, I stopped my workout and went to my car, and I was talking to you guys in my car. And I was like, shit, these guys are right. All right, let's figure something out. So I told him I was going to step down. And I was like, you know what? If it's one of those things, and it's still one of those experiences where, I don't know, I have the philosophy with a lot of things, but one of the things is like, if everyone in the room is calling you an asshole, chances are you're the asshole. Mm-hmm. And they weren't saying that by any means, but like, you can't always be right.
Yeah.
And I was like, fuck, And so I was like, okay, we'll step down. I mean, I told him, like, we'll restructure and figure things out, which ended up happening, which ended up stemming from this, which shortly, occurred.
Yeah, I would say within a week is when you went up to the clan director position and switched around everything.
Yeah, and after like I was like pouring my heart out to these guys, I was like, you know what, you're right. I shouldn't be in this position, you guys, but let's work something out because I still want to see the group work at a long scale. And then like after I like said that shit, and I was super into like, just being honest and frank with them, they're like, oh, it was just a joke and that you took it too far. Oh my god, I was like, oh my god, that was the best shit, because it was like, I don't know, it's such a weird moment, but it was actually a defining moment for FaT.
Well, and see, I was there too, but I joined the conference late because I was still a manager at the time, and I joined the room late. And I remember as soon as I joined, somebody was like, "Oh yeah," and then Pun was gonna step up as the new squad director, and Kilrim actually reminded me of this part. Well, I was like, I played along with that. I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, sure," but Kilrim reminded me of this, that J.O. Poppin also blamed blamed me for it. He's like, "Oh, it was all Pun's idea. You be mad at Pun if you're gonna be mad at anybody."
Yeah. But one of the best parts is after Jimmy got off Discord when he's at the gym, because he was in his car at first. He's like, all right, let me get my shit, go home, shower, and we'll talk on Discord when I get home. So we had, I'm going to say, about 15 to 20 minutes before he got there to talk about how we wanted the rest of the situation to go down.
Yeah, I remember that.
But as much of a prank as it actually was, it did end up helping to, I guess, for lack of a better term, kick you in the ass to show that, hey, we probably should change the structure of how things are run.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. No, it was 100% that. I mean, it was like, you guys are right with everything you said, and I realized that. But yeah, that was a good one.
I'm just smiling to myself right now thinking about it because it was hilarious. Because I want to say I joined halfway through, and from what I remember, it was just fucking hilarious.
Jimmy couldn't see this, but we were in the DM, and we were like, he's taking us dead ass serious. We were like, someone's got to pull the plug on this prank.
Yeah, we were like, BIOS, abort mission. Because this is not how this was supposed to go.
He was supposed to get like super defensive. He wasn't supposed to agree.
Yeah, no, you guys added me to that DM. I still remember reading through it. You guys
Oh
were like,
my God.
abort, abort, like in all caps. Like whenever I started being serious
Yeah.
about it.
That was a
But
great.
yeah,
That was so fucking funny.
yeah, and then shortly after that, I know Jay came in and he was my successor for the squad director position, and I stepped up to create a new role called clan director, and that was our first purple position. I was the only dude, and basically my job was to be in charge of all the like gen teams that we had at the time. Was I think it was like a couple, it was just ambassador personnel. Um, when we had some just general teams and those, I was going to be in charge of those, or at least overseeing those, because those teams had their own managers. And then Jay were to take over the squad position, and then eventually, I know that Bios became the director for squad after that, and he was like the director for a very long time. I think it was
A little over a year,
it had to be, I mean, it definitely was like a
or
huge.
maybe right at a year, because he only recently became the second clan leader. But yeah, Bios was definitely the squad director for a long time. So, and then th- this all happened sometime between December 2018 and February 2019. Unfortunately, we don't have exact dates for all this stuff, but then also within that time frame, Never Get the Suck stepped down as the War Thunder director and passed it to Altair. Um, so now getting to that huge rush of recruits that Kilrim and I were talking about. Kilrim, you want to talk a bit about that and the situation surrounding that huge flood or huge wave of recruits?
Yeah, so basically, the Tarkov division at that time hadn't really seen too much growth yet. We got like a couple people here and there. We were just, I think we were recruiting off Reddit, and I think just Reddit. I think that's the only avenue we had at the time because they didn't have the official Tarkov Discord yet. That was before they even made it. BSG even made that Discord. And then I can't remember what version number, but there was a big patch update. I want to say it was like 0.9 to 0.10. Maybe it was 10 to 11. I can't remember. But that patch was very significant for Tarkov because it revamped a lot of things. And it brought a big general player base of Tarkov, like overall. I mean, you can't really look up stats for Tarkov. It's kind of harder to judge, but it brought a huge wave of people back, and all their Tarkov groups had died or joined other groups or whatever. So they saw our postings because they were really well made, and then they just came in, and it was such a gigantic wave in that month because they updated on Christmas or Christmas Eve, I think, because it's Moscow time. So I think it was like Christmas Eve, like the middle of the day or something, like mid-afternoon for EST or something. And I remember for 3-4 weeks, like halfway into January, that we had so many people joining the Discord and so many people applying. We had I timed it one day, 1 or 2 days, and it was basically every hour we had an applicant.
Yeah, and I remember that as well because at the time I was the ambassador manager, and so I was in charge of introducing the new applicants into the clan, and it was a rough month. I'm pretty sure the entire ambassador team got uh, burnt out that month, and I had to replace everybody, and it was just like I remember there was one group introduction that I did. I think there was like 15 people, and it was Bios and I both like tag teaming it, where I got the information from and did the tags and stuff from the top half of the list, and Bios did the bottom half, and we were both like given the information as we could, but it was just wild the amount of people that came flooding in for that 3 to 4 week period.
Yeah. It's so bad I would do them at work too, just to help. Like I would try to do like 2 or 3 or less, and just sneak them in between work, between doing work and not trying to get caught by the big bosses at work. And yeah, it was not a good time. I mean, it was a good time, but not a good time at the same time.
Yeah, and that really like kicked off the next era in FAT, which was the era of expansion, where we ended up trying a lot of games, trying to make them our like main games, and we were just trying out a lot of stuff, trying to expand. Some of them worked out, some of the stuff didn't. So the first one we tried was a new game called War of Rights. Um, it was a Civil War game, Civil War first person shooter. And it was a fun game with one glaring issue. Uh, Anybody want to point out what said issue was?
So think about what the Civil War was fought over, and then make your best guess in terms of what type of people that would attract, especially the groups that ran on the southern, the southern side. Oh my God, it was. I mean, obviously racism, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it was comical because the War of Rights, I pushed that along a lot because I really wanted to, because I was following its development. I was reading up on its dev blogs. I'm like, that'd be really cool if FAT, because at the time we had a postscriptum division, we had a squad division, and that kind of mixed with like modern warfare, mixed with World War II. I thought it'd be really, really cool for as a group if we could kind of compile this library of communities that would encompass almost every single era of warfare. And when it came to War of Rights as a Civil War game, it's like line battles. It's kind of like Hold Fast, but a little bit different. And that was the main push. But man, it was bad because like we as a group we don't fuck with racism, and that was well known. And also because I think War of Rights, because I mean, shocker, War of Rights ended up failing as a game. Um, but there was two main reasons. Both of them could fit under the umbrella of it being a toxic community. But one side of it was the game was super racist. In voice chat, you'd hear people saying the N word, hard R, all the time. And then the other, and that attracts a certain type of people for them to stick around in that community and start clans communities. And the second issue that was is that our group kind of stuck out a little bit as a sore thumb, and the community really didn't like us, not only for our belief system and common sense, the common sense way we think, but each group was. I mean, it was a decision that the developers made that I really didn't understand. Is that they would create this, basically the official forums would kind of like made groups kind of fit into this mold, these communities and clans. You either had to be like, it was all realism units. So it was like the 9th New York, the 1st Texas, the I don't know, the 7th Pennsylvania. Like that was every single group. And then there we were, FAT. And instantly other groups that like us just because of that. It's the stupidest thing in the world. But that toxicity driven from racism and just an awful culture of the game really kind of led into the other one. So it was hard to recruit. Other groups hated us. Like I remember I hopped into a game, and some guy wanted, because the way they would recruit, it was almost hilarious, is they would literally like stand at the spawn, and it was like some guy selling peanuts at a baseball game.
Yeah, I
Like,
remember that actually.
he's like, want to join our group? Join fucking nine. I don't know. I don't even remember the group name, but this guy
Whatever.
tried to get me to join his group. And I told him like, hey, you know what? I wish you the best of luck. I know how hard it is as a recruiter, but I'm really not interested. And like he got super defensive, even though I said it like a nice dude because I wasn't trying to get involved in whatever he was doing. And he said like, oh, what do you mean? What do you mean you want to be in our group? I'm like, well, I mean, I don't know if you see the tag in my username, but I already run a group. We play, this game. We play Squad, Tarkov, all that. And then he's like, yeah. Like, what? You think your group is better than us? And he started like cursing me out. I was like, dude, what are you doing? Like, I'm just spreading out positive like vibes. I hate that term vibes, but like it's the best term for it. I mean, it was just like the most comical thing, and that situation I think is the reason I remember that so much is because I mean you encounter toxic members of any game in any community, but that was like the most symbolistic of like an everyday occurrence in terms of what we had to deal with. So it was impossible to build a community. It was exhausting for the staff. It was so much. So eventually, it didn't last too much longer, and yeah,
Yeah,
it was. I
that
mean,
was it was just a
yeah,
bad a bad time overall. Like I said,
yeah,
the game was fun for the first like week, but then after everybody started being racist and toxic, it just drove everybody else away from the game.
Yeah. What
yeah.
was also annoying too is the admins, right? A lot of them were mostly surprise Southern regiments, or most of the popular servers were Southern run regiments, and so you'd be like, can you like ban these people for racism? And they'd be like, nope, historical accuracy. And that we would be like, that's bullshit. Like, well, I'm gonna shoot this guy that's not listening to me because I'm the officer or NCO, and that this is historically accurate too. If you didn't want to do anything, they just killed you and it was treason.
Mm-hmm.
And then you would do that, and they would be hyper adamant. Like two, they would just be like, "You're banned." It's like, but this is historically accurate. They're like, "Nope, we don't allow team killing." It's like, but you don't ban racists, and that's historically accurate. But you'll ban us for team killing, and we would just like, yeah, because we would team kill people that hard art, or we would we would just the role play of you're gonna listen to the officer, he's gonna kill you is awesome. And I've had like my top two gaming moments of in a multiplayer game are both in War of Rights, because I've never had those experiences before. Like one of them is repelling a bayonet rush from the enemy team, and I'm like in the front too. I'm like this is awful. And then the other one was I was an NCO holding a line in, I can't remember, but it was the city map. Was holding a line in the street, and I'm like yelling at all these people to not retreat. And like I shoot one dude who retreats, I reload, and I shoot another Confederate dude. And I'm just still like yelling at all these people to hold the line. I get stabbed 3 times by a bayonet. 2 is supposed to kill you, so I must have regenerated enough health to be able to live one more stab. And I was just like, I shouldn't even be alive. What is going on? And I'm still yelling at these people, like, hold the line, don't fall back. I'm gonna kill you if you fucking retreat. And I turn around because Yoshi was the officer at the time, and I'm just like, oh, it's just me and Yoshi, the only ones left. Everyone else is dead. And I don't notice that. And the last thing I said is if any of you guys, I say something like, if any of you guys, I can't remember. I said something like, don't, like, if you guys don't hold this line, I'll kill you myself. And then I like turn around and it's just me and Yoshi. And then I'm like, oh, fuck. And then I turn back around, and then there's another Confederate about to stab me. And I'm like, oh, this is the end for me. And then Yoshi pulls his revolver out, and we just last stand. Like, I get one more shot off. Yoshi empties the revolver, then me and him just get prison shanked, and we die and lose the position. And I haven't had anything that cool since that game. But yeah, the community just ruined it, and the server were just trash on all servers.
Yeah. So, uh, there was it. Well, the War of Rights division started out under Aloe, and then I think it was passed to Yoshi afterwards,
Yeah.
and then
Mm-hmm.
Yoshi was the last one for War of Rights before we closed down the division. There was also a leader switch in the postscriptum division as well. Um, it's all right. It's written down a bit weird. Does anybody know or remember who
So
switched out for who?
it went from Sarge to Aloe and then Aloe to Shizno.
But
Got it.
the Shizno thing was temporary though. So
Yeah.
the way it ended up happening was, Sarge is actually, or Sarge Foster is in the army, and he was shipping out, and he couldn't, and he's still on leave. I think he has like 2 more years, maybe a year and a half left, and he couldn't lead postscriptum anymore. So then he passed to Aloe. Aloe led it for a good while, and then needed like a 2 month break just to kind of mentally clear his head. So he passed it to Doc Shizno, who did an excellent job of keeping it up in his absence, and then it got passed to Aloe again.
When
And
he
then
came
that's
back.
where, yeah, and then that's where, and I think after Aloe, I don't know if this, yeah, okay, so we kind of have to skip because the way it's in all of our, the way we're reading all of these events is in chronological order, so I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. But
Yeah.
just to conclude, postscriptum, because we actually have a postscriptum division now, but it is like a new division. So it closed back in the day, and then it reopened as more interest, grew. And so, like I said, it went to Sarge, to Aloe, to Doc, back to Aloe, and then eventually it closed down postscriptum in November of 2019. Which I know we're jumping ahead. We're still going to talk about that space because we started it in all the transitions happened in January of 2019. But yeah, that's how that worked, and then eventually we reopened postscriptum later on under Crescent Circle.
Okay, yeah, and now Crescent has it. So it was only closed down for about 3 months, and really it was just waiting for an update to the game, because it had been, I don't know, 6-8 months since it had been updated. So
Yeah,
everybody just got burnt out of it.
yeah, and it's rock bottom. I remember looking at the Steam charts and like peak North America times, like 8 o'clock,
Like
8 p.m.
one
Central
server.
Time. Not even. I remember
Yeah,
one time there
less.
were 26 people, and then that was like, okay, we can't do this. This
Mhm.
is too much. So we ended up having to close that one down. And but I mean, it was cool because and that was all in January of 2019 of like the war rights thing and the transition from postscriptum. But in May of 2019, we actually expanded into Mordhau, which is a game I still play a lot. I know
Yeah.
you guys might see me only because it's the only game I can run, and it's also an amazing game. But Yoshi started that as a director, which was really cool in
That
May.
was pretty much like really shortly after he stopped War of Rights, he pretty much just hopped to Mordhau. There was a little bit of time in between, but it was basically just waiting for Mordhau to come out.
Yeah, I mean Yoshi's an incredibly talented person. Like in terms of leading, he's great. And I think Yoshi ended up transferring. I know I'm going off the list, so it's not necessarily the most chronological easy thing to follow, but I think categorizing it by game is easy for the listener.
Yeah.
Eventually, in July, Yoshi steps down as Mordhau director, passes off to Hawkwolf, and eventually Hawkwolf passed it on to Eternal Rage, and then we had a failed merger, which we'll talk. Actually, no, let's talk about that now. We might as well hit all the games. So in November of 2019, basically Internal Rage, who is the Mordhau director at the time that got transitioned from Hawkwolf in September, was really close with a competitive group called RIP or RIP, as we called them. And I think that was kind of the end of the division because we really, really wanted. I mean, the way it's written in this is hysterical, but we tried for like a 2 month period after we voted them to merge in to the group. We didn't really take account of if a group is merging to an existing division, the culture of the clan or the culture of both communities has to be in parallel. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And that couldn't be more of the case for what happened with RIP because they merged into FaT and it was toxic. It was basically like imagine a 14-year-old edgy CS:GO player that likes to say racist shit and be homophobic any way he can and just be edgy and annoying. That was basically, I don't want to speak for all the Rip guys. There were some Rip guys I really liked, but that was like the vast majority. And once we banned one of them,
The
the
rest just
rest that
left. Yeah.
left. It was like this, and we told him it was going to happen. It was the dumbest thing. It was just like it was something that we really wanted to happen because Mordhau is a very difficult game to recruit for because it's not only is community like fairly toxic, but
There's no
it,
voice in game.
yeah, I mean, thank God because the community is awful.
Yeah.
But it also creates this environment where it's very difficult to recruit and form relationships and bring people in. So, and every division has activity standards because we need to make sure that our voice channels are full and our divisions are active. I hate dead voice channels. It's something that, as a design choice, FAT is not a fan of, and that's why all of our divisions end up shutting down, or at least some of them, if they can't maintain activity in like a very long term way, they end up getting shut down. But that's what happened with Mordhau, and
Yeah,
it stinks.
and what I think happened, like the reason why the Breakout and BLT mergers worked and the RIP merger didn't, was that those when those two groups merged in with us, it was three basically only squad uh, communities merging together to make one big, basically, or mainly squad community. Whereas RIP, they were coming from an only Mordhau community, coming into a community where Mordhau was definitely not the preferred game of most people. Most people, even to this day, play either Squad or Escape from Tarkov. Those are still our two basically main games of the main games that we have directors for. And so I think that that's a part of the reason why the merger didn't work, is it was just too different. Whereas the other two, they kind of evolved with us.
Yeah, I think you definitely have a point whenever Breakout and BLT merged in because cultural. I think the biggest thing is cultural alignment, and I know it sounds like a very serious term for groups playing video games, and it is, but the kind of it still holds up because if you have a community that has the same ideals as like Breakout and BLT, pretty much were FAT, like in terms of different people, different staff, different names, but all whenever we got together, we were all together as one. And whenever you don't have that, and whenever it was a huge learning point for us because I was a big factor of it, and it's one of those things like whenever you create a group, you try things and things fail, and some things work. And it was a big lesson to learn is that like if a group's going to be merging into FAT, creating a division, and an existing division, they have to be 100% together and align with how we think and Breakout and BLT did that great. RIP, it was awful. It was like it was straight up the worst. It was like the most awkward thing in the world. But I mean, Mordhau is still a fantastic game in its own. I love playing it. I still play it. But in terms of it being a division, it ended up closing down because it really couldn't necessarily function within our structure just because it's so difficult to recruit and it's so difficult to recruit but recruit well. And we have good members in FAT where they're not toxic, and unfortunately a lot of Mordhau communities are competitive, which ends up being incredibly toxic. So it's just the way it was. But I know shortly after that, around August, and we're jumping around a little bit, I ended up stepping up to splitting my responsibilities because we've grown so many staff teams where I brought Kilrim in as the clan director, and I created a new role called clan leader. And essentially, Kilrim helped me by taking over the Gen teams, and I would help oversee a little bit of them, but for the most part, Kilrim would oversee them, and we would, that's whenever the main final structure groundwork kind of took place. And then in his place, John Smith 119 became the director of Tarkov, and that pretty much concluded the August portion. And in this whole era of expansion, and we're not nearly done yet because it goes all the way to February 2020, is a lot of change and a lot of us trying stuff that's new and a lot of us trying things that didn't work or trying things that end up working. And But I
Yeah,
think
well,
that's the main
like
thing.
like the next thing that was a change that did end up working was when J.O. Poppins started the Rainbow Six Siege division. Um, that division, uh, he started it, and because he had just been playing it and enjoying it, but we, I I don't know exactly how many people joined because of it, because didn't I didn't really pay attention to the siege portion. I just wasn't interested in the game. But um, do you guys have an idea? Does anybody have an idea about how many people have joined because of siege?
I mean, we can look at the numbers right now and find the number of people who have the siege tag, but it was definitely a increase. I mean, I know shortly after Jay started it, yeah, I mean, right now, and I'm speaking on the date of the May 29th. I'm sure I know this is going to come out a little bit later, but right now the siege community is in a little bit of a dip in
Hmm.
terms of activity. But
I feel like
that is
that's. I feel like it's probably going to pick up though, because I think the new season just started. So
yeah.
hopefully more people start playing it again.
Oh yeah, and we have goals internally. Like we just like right before the recording this podcast, Kilrim and myself and all the other clan directors were in a, or I'm sorry, all the other game directors were in a call, and we have like a monthly director meeting. We talked about like how COVID, which we'll eventually discuss, um, has affected activity, and it affected Postscriptum and Rainbow Six in very negative ways, unfortunately. And and it's not just that, because whenever you hear about, I mean, I'll talk about it a little bit later, but COVID I thought would have the inverse effect and make FAT like fucking blossom because everyone's at home, but that wasn't the case, unfortunately. And with Rainbow Six, a big factor of it was the community had like a lot of people had a lot of difficulties with the updates. I know a lot of people were saying that there was like a hacker issue within the game, and there was a lot of different factors that compiled up to get us where we're at now. But we're moving forward in a way where the divisions that don't necessarily have the activity because of COVID, we're reestablishing our activity standards, which is really cool. And that should, like, about when this podcast is out, you guys should start seeing some of that. And
Hopefully.
yeah,
So uh, the next division that we started, which ended up being a failed division, unfortunately, was the Halo division. When the Master Chief Collection dropped in December, we were there was. I know I was super excited for it, and I'm still super excited for the rest of the games to drop because
yeah.
just because of the nostalgia, really. But I think that's where the division went wrong. Is it was a nostalgia division. Um, and we just lost activity of it. I don't remember exactly when. Oh, it that's a little later. So, um, we started it with Aloe again. He was the director of it, and I do believe he was the director the entire time. Or no, never mind.
No,
Closing arc.
closing arc.
Okay.
Yeah, closing arc ended up picking it off. And what happened with the Halo division, and it's funny, we have to explain a lot of this, like because it's really hard to create a community that's long standing in any game, and everything kind of has to work perfectly. Like with Tarkov and Squad, easy. It's so perfectly aligned with FAT. I think a big portion of that is because we built the structure up upon that. But the with Halo, and it was something that I didn't estimate, and I really wanted to work because I love Halo. That's what got me into playing games. Is Halo on Xbox 360 way back in the day, Halo 3, and it's right now the communities that exist in the Halo are really difficult to recruit for, because the communities that exist are communities that existed whenever the Halo 3 actually came out, Halo 4 came out back in the day, where they have had these close knit number of people who refuse to change games. And that's great for Halo members in those existing communities, but it makes it very, very difficult if the community is founded by those groups of people, and it makes it very difficult for people to be recruited into recruit members, because whenever people play Halo, they're usually looking for a quick pick up and play experience, not necessarily something that's more clan oriented. Even though the events we did were awesome and the custom games and shit was amazing, and I still, really think we should do some events with it. But I mean, FAT has high standards for communities in terms of what we expect for activity, because we need our channels to be full. And Halo, it just couldn't get there. And it's not even a knock to Aloe. It's not even a knock to Closing Arc, because, I mean, it was a mutual agreement. Like, if you look back at War of Rights, we talked about with Mordhau, like, there's so many games that don't necessarily fit the mold, and it just doesn't come together. And that was unfortunately the case for Halo as well.
Yeah, and so in February, we started Halo in when did we?
December.
In December,
When it
yeah.
dropped.
So
Yeah.
we started Halo in December, and then in February, Aloe passed the director role over to Closing Arc, and then unfortunately in April we had to shut it down as a main game, because it because of the reasons that Jimmy was just talking about. And actually, we missed something for Siege. I know it's in the next era, but I feel like we should just round off Siege and finish talking about its history, because there's still 2 more director swaps that have happened recently.
Yeah. So initially, the Siege division was started by J.O. Poppin, who had like this huge passion for Rainbow Six, and really, really had some awesome ideas for how the group would run. But yeah, eventually got passed off to Mako, and how that looked from an internal view. The real reason why it got passed down was because even though Jay had an awesome direction for the game, he was also leading our comp team at the time. And leading a comp team as well as leading a division is like leading 2 divisions, and it's a lot of work. Unless, like, for whatever reason you're a millionaire who doesn't have anything to do all day, like, it's impossible for that to be your full-time thing. And to have being in charge of 2 different things of that massive of a scale, it's just not sustainable. And so it ended up getting passed to Mako, who was Jay's right hand man, and then eventually it got passed to African Water, who eventually from there led it for a good amount of time, and then passed it to Kalakaboot, who is running it now. And that was actually really recent. That's like this month, May 2020. And yeah, so I mean, it's had a lot of different changes, a lot of different leadership, and overall, it's had its ups and downs in terms of general community. But I think I know it's been a really big part of FAT, and the amount of people we brought in from Rainbow Six has been pretty huge.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was all of the games that, or all the history of all the games that have been main games and still are main games. That almost rounds up or wraps up the era of expansion. There is 2 more things to talk about there. There's this is for Kilrim, because if you know Kilrim at all, you know that he loves banning people from the Discord if they mess up. And it's actually funny because on Valentine's Day, he very much got a Valentine's Day present. If you want to talk about that, Kill.
Yeah, so I remember I was just like, I don't know, chilling in lobby or something, playing Third Kingdoms 4. I don't know what I was doing. But I basically, like, my DMs immediately lit up like a rocket ship, and they're like, you need to look at public. And I'm like, okay. So I look at public, and it's just like a never-ending wall of spam by what I thought was one person, but it turned out to be like apparently 96 people. Apparently someone was bored enough to count all the people I banned. But yeah, 96 people that had the same display name, different Discord account names, same profile picture, and they just all spammed the same line. I can't remember what it said. I think it said like Paladin says hi. So thankfully it wasn't anything like racist or any derogatory slurs. It's just something that it made sense, but they were just spamming the server so fast. But yeah, I think it took me a good like consecutive 5-10 minutes of me banning people on Discord. Yeah, I had to turn public off. I think I had turned all of them off. I think I turned public, media, and video games all off for a moment. Just sat there, right-click ban, recent spam. Just sit there doing that for 5-10 minutes. But
Filled up your ban quota for a while.
oh, dude, I have like new powers now. It's great.
And for anyone that knows Kilrim, he sits at the top of the Discord, and you can see that he always has his custom status as however many days it has been since the last ban. And right now it's sitting at a toasty 0. So, means he banned someone
I've been
today.
having a good streak this week, or month actually.
Yeah, and that was right after a drought of like a 2 weeks without a ban or something like that, and then you get the 96.
Yeah,
So.
yeah, that's the highest it's ever been. Was not 14 days, and I remember that ban that broke that streak. That was actually a member because we don't normally ban too many members. It's not too often. It's maybe like 1 or twice a month. Usually just those public idiots come in and say the hard RN word, or try to just spam, or other spam bots, or general trash. So that usually sustains me for most of the year.
Yeah, and then you have the next one does also affect you, Kilrim, because your responsibilities as the clan leader, I think is what your role is called, got split
Well,
into
clan
two.
director.
Oh, you're clan director? Okay, I
Yeah.
didn't remember the names, so um, so yeah, your responsibility got split into two. So could you give us a bit of information about that and how that
Yeah.
went
So
down and why?
that became like it was the same thing when Jimmy had to step down from the squad position and then take over the gen teams or when he first split his responsibilities is what I meant, and then I took over the gen teams. I was at basically I think I was running 11 or 10 teams at the time, and it was kind of getting unruly. Like I could still handle it, but it was kind of getting like my communication with some of the teams that I'm not as familiar with, just based on my experiences, like any of the tech related. Because basically, what happens is Gen divided into the more tech oriented teams. They became their own division, the tech division. And like me personally, like I did a little bit of IT schooling after high school, and I was originally going to do IT stuff, and then I kind of got further into that and the stuff you need to learn for that, and I was like, f this, I'm not gonna fucking do that shit. um so I had like a very basic understanding, but like the modding, Jet, who's the modding manager, he would always be coming to me for direction and like ask me stuff, and I'd be like, bro, I don't know what you just said to me, like I have no idea what you just said. And then same with FaT programming, which was led by Deacon for a long time. Right now it's Tim. And there was the other team. Oh, FaT website, which that was kind of made right before we made this change, so I didn't really have to like um, do too much with that. Plus, Boolean kind of had like his own. Um, I wanted to say lesson plan for some reason, but he had his own goals already set up for the web UI that he's been working on. So I didn't really like have to, I guess, micromanage him or give him any direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I was good on that, and then just ended up we brought in BIOS, who when I was still red, when I was still Tarkov Division, and Jimmy was still the squad director. Bios is in the one that ends up being the tech clan director, and when we were both still red, he kind of was the position that I have currently, but that back then when we didn't really need it to be its own position, so Bios was naturally our first choice on who to bring in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, plus with how long he's been with the clan and all he's done for it.
Yeah, he's always, even when like I was still starting out, like if I had questions, it was either Jimmy or Baus who I had to talk to. So he's always been like a gen manager esque role throughout FAT's evolution. Yeah. I love Baus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I wish he could have been here tonight. Unfortunately,
no, but Bios,
he was busy.
Yeah. I mean, Bios has always been like, I don't know. Bios has been a gigantic. FAT wouldn't be the same without him, and I know for a fact we couldn't be at the place that we are today in FAT without Bios. And and I say that for all of our staff members, but specifically Bios is like, I mean, he's first 10. He's first 10 recruits. I mean, he probably knows his number of whenever he got recruited to FAT, but he's been there since day one. He's had such massive influence in FAT.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy. But I mean, me and him have always had a really good relationship in that necessarily with, I don't know. I always say this because it works, but I don't want it to come off as a negative. But I think Bios and I are different people in the way that we operate, in the way that we view things, in the way that we make decisions. And I think that's been I like that about him. Like if Bios has ever had something to say, like if he disagrees with me, I fucking love it. Bios isn't afraid to say like I disagree with you. What you're saying is stupid. And I think having that in a group and having someone that's not afraid unapologetically themselves and not afraid to make decisions and all that. Because I would still be saying this if he was here, but I mean, no, he's. I don't think his name has been brought up in this list as much as
it probably should.
Yeah, just because he's always been like behind the scenes.
Yeah, he always does stuff in the background, which is why his name hasn't been brought up as much. But yeah, even ever since I've joined, like I've always known, like he's always been helping with whatever needed to be done.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt.
So, but when that happened and Bios and Kilrim split up, the role that Kilrim previously had, Bios then stepped up from being the squad director, and Quavo took his place back in February. And now, so that's Quavo taking his place was really the last part of the era of expansion, and then the last era that we have, which is the current era, is the era of the COVID-19 pandemic, which Jimmy kind of touched on earlier, has not gone as well for FAT as we thought.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a crazy couple months. So I mean, we started, the way this era is classified is basically March until today, and I think it's probably the way we're going to look back on this. It's going to be March until June, and then June is whenever we'll may start a new era of whatever. But I mean, it's hit every single aspect of life whether it comes to socially, economically, politically. It's touched every single person. And I thought and honestly, I still think it makes sense the way that I thought before reality kind of hit. Is I pushed out whenever it started happening. I thought, even though this is a tragic thing to happen and it's not ideal for really anybody and it's sad, but we can still make it an advantage for FAT. And then I don't know, that thinking might be flawed, it might be shitty. I definitely wasn't correct in my thinking, but in terms of using it as an advantage, I really thought that was a possibility because, and people still think it is, because if you look at people are at home, people will play more games. That's how I looked at it. It's very simple, cut and dry. Like, okay, let's play off of this. Let's use this to our
Yeah.
advantage.
What I
And
think happened is people just got bored of playing games all day and wanted to
yeah,
find other stuff to do.
yeah. I mean, that's a major portion of it, and it's such a multi-layered thing where that was it. People weren't necessarily, people were playing the same. Our community members traditionally, our community members play the same game a lot because they're part of a community for that game. And what ended up happening was members got super, like you said, Pun. Members got super bored of playing the same games. Either members were it's two parties. I mean, they were either essential and they were working a ton, working extra hours, getting exhausted because they have an increased amount of workload, or the other opposite side of the spectrum where they were at home and their lives are different and they have to make sure their kids are getting education. They have to, their whole lifestyle takes a massive shift. And either way you go with it. And then that massive shift in lifestyle, the first thing you cut out of that to make sure your life is balanced is playing games. And I think that's the major cause of this dip in activity. And it's up. I mean, honestly, it stinks because right before COVID, I'd say February 2020, all of our games had awesome activity, and we're building back to that point. Right now, we're at a good point. But it's one of those things. At the end of March, that's really when things kicked off. And Discord and activity took a huge major hit, and then in April, we noticed. I know we kind of mentioned it previously, but Halo ends up being, because of the effects and because of the community causes within Halo that we touched on earlier, that ended up becoming a side game, which stunk, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Another thing that happened because of people not playing games a bunch is, and I'll refer to Sax for this one, is the events team. Just for community-wide events, we used to have a ton of people show up, and well, Sax, I'll let you get a word
Yeah,
in.
my events for that went from, I'd say, 20 to 30 people would attend. It went from that to 5 to 10 would attend a single event. And I literally stopped doing Jeopardy events because no more than 2 or 3 people would show up.
Yeah, and
I
also
even
oh, sorry, you can go, Sax. Sorry.
I even cut my team back from, I think I had maybe 8 or 12 people to just 3. I completely shut almost the entire team down.
Yeah, and I was bummed about it as well because I had this idea for an event that it was called Games Through Time, and basically we would just hop on and play a different game for a few times, or just a few days a week, just play a different game, going from Mordhau all the way up to Star Citizen. So just going through a whole era of working our way to the future of games, and I was super excited for it. And then people just ended up not showing up because people weren't playing games. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
for in terms of events, even specific game events, like squad events, that totally took a hit, and they're just now getting it restarted and having events again.
Yeah, I mean, the fundamentally, I know we talked about this last night, Pun, but I mean, the idea of games through time, that string of events, that set was an amazing idea, and I still think it's a great idea. Starting from Mordhau, which is medieval combat, to futuristic space travel, it's badass, and I think that's something that we should definitely revisit, in the future, whenever everything evens out, maybe in another quarter from now or 2 quarters or whenever you guys feel comfortable as an event team. But yeah, I mean, it touched every single aspect. It touched our financials too. I posted a little announcement. I know this is a little bit more like of a behind the scenes look. Is the way FAT runs its finances is that we always operate with a backup plan, and the backup plan is we roughly kind of built up a month of donations under on as onto the amount of our existing balance within the group. Um, that way, if anything really happened, if we took a dip, we could bounce back easily. And with the COVID-19 pandemic, is we completely shut down all optional costs when it came to, we basically just had servers and some software, and then that was really it. And we ended up inadvertently, which is my mistake, but I think it's honestly a good mistake to make, is that financially we were over prepared and we overcompensated and we played it too safe, where we didn't have any giveaways, which we normally do. We didn't have any event tournament prizes, anything like that. And I mean, right now we're in an incredibly financially healthy state, but it affected it. I mean, it brought down our monthly Patreon to $200 to, I think, 250 of what it was. And then eventually now it's built up. Like next month is going to be huge. Coming into July, it's awesome. Like the amount of support, we've gained $100 this month in Patreon, just because everything's kind of normalizing and getting back to normal. But from an economic standpoint, from an activity standpoint, from a social standpoint, it's changed every single aspect of FAT, and I think that's really what the era of the COVID-19 pandemic was really about. I mean, because we saw transitions like Quavo stepping down from the squad director, because he had to focus on real life stuff, and then UAV guy taking up the reins for the division, which has been awesome. I mean, he showed a lot of involvement, and that's really getting us back on track. And then African Water, this isn't necessarily related to COVID-19, but he's passed it to Kalakaboot for the Rainbow Six director position. But it's affected every division. I mean, it's really been a changing, and it leaves us in a weird spot because it's a weird time in history.
Yeah.
And the fact that it boils down to affecting a gaming community shows how much, or having a massive effect on the gaming community shows how much of a massive effect COVID-19 has had on the world in general. And that's where we're at right now. I think we're right now at the end of it. Like my gym just opened up. Like businesses are opening up, restaurants are opening up. At least where I'm at in Dallas, Texas, it's slowly. And I think it's going to take a month or two before we get there, before we kind of move past where we're currently at and into the future. And I see a really, really bright future for FAT because of all the awesome things planned, and also collectively as we grow and mature. A lot of this history of FAT, the book of records, has been defined by successes in what we've done. And I think we can probably, like, for example, the successes of the BLT and Breakout merger, and then as well, it's been characterized by the failures that we've had as a group. And I think that our group learns a lot from what went wrong previously, why things didn't work. And I think this knowledge that we've accumulated and that we've grown from this experience, and that's been amazing to look back on, Sax, with the book of records. It really shows the future sustainability of our group and what really can be accomplished. I think whatever the fuck the next era is going to be called, I hope it's something positive.
Yeah.
And it's not the era of fucking COVID 20 or whatever.
COVID round two.
Super COVID.
Yeah, I mean, whatever it is, I have a very, very, it's easy to be optimistic as a leader, but from like looking at everything we've done, I think the next era, I guess, of FAT is going to be an awesome one. And the stuff we have planned in store. And actually, I think we're the best place to leave this off, because we've been going a little bit over schedule.
Yeah.
It's something that we actually determined tonight, which is some fresh off the press news, which is should be announced by the time that this podcast is posted, but is brand new to Pun and Sax. Is tonight we just voted on the newest game expansion for FAT, which is Last Oasis. Basically, Mako, as you previously heard, the guy that took over the Siege division, started his own clan, and has basically been working and building it up to a point where it'd be ready to merge into FAT. And tonight, directors at a director meeting unanimously voted for it coming into FAT. So that's going to be the biggest change. That's going to bring a ton of awesome activity. And it's really going to morph how the group currently is. And no, I'm super excited for it. And
we'll have to try the game out a little more than I already have.
All I hope is that we can come back in 2 years and go over a second chapter of this, and we'll all still be around in the clan and able to do another podcast about more shit that's happened.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's 100% it. That's the goal. And I think this podcast is an awesome idea as well. That this is the first 2.5 years. That's really kind of where we're at because we started January 2018. We're halfway through
Yeah.
2020,
Mhm.
and I think once we get to, I guess technically it'd be 2023, we can.
Yeah,
I don't know.
we'll meet back in 2023 and
Yeah,
see.
Dude, we got this far. What the hell is 2023 gonna look like?
it's two and a
I
half.
don't want to know.
It's 2.5 years. That's
It
something that
is.
honestly, I'm not even. It's not even a self flex. It's just like we as a group, as a community, because there's no way I could do it on my own. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah,
Like
no,
the how
I think we are incredibly lucky with how good our staff teams have turned out to be.
Oh yeah. I mean, it really comes down to people and structure. And fortunately, the structure is good and sustainable, and then the people are even better. Like it's insane how much time people pour into the group, and even like there's a ton of ways that anyone can support FAT, whether it's through a Patreon or becoming a staff member, boosting, or just being an active member. But I'm blown straight up blown away about not only how far we've come, but how much continued support that we receive. And that's really the biggest motivator for myself is that like so many people pour in so much time. And I could give shout outs to literally our whole staff team individually, thank everybody. But at the end of the day, it's this one giant conglomerate of people around the world that don't know each other necessarily. Some do, but most don't know each other in real life, that came together and just made this Discord fucking badass. And I know it's only going to get better and better from here.
Yeah, it's a great note to end it on. I know that some of us have to get to bed soon. It's getting kind of late, but I'd like to thank the three of you for showing up and participating in the podcast. And I'd also like to thank everybody for listening.
Yeah.
I hope
Thank you so
everybody at
thank you.
least learned something about our history, because it is definitely an interesting one.
Yeah, it's a big one. And I just want to give a quick shout out to the podcast team. Even though Pun's phenomenal ass is here tonight, there's a lot of people behind the scenes that make it work. And I just want to thank them as well as every other staff member in FAT for really making this Discord kind of, come to life and really help us operate it at the scale that we do.
Well, thanks for that, Jimmy. I appreciate it. Thank you all for watching. That is the end of episode 7. And just gonna let the recording go for a little bit longer, and Gordo can cut it where he wants to.
Gordo, you
And
sexy bastard.
All
Sitting
right.
there
Make
listening to
sure
me.
make sure you put that in there somewhere. Like at the beginning is just like a small.
I haven't
Just
stopped
stick
recording
that in
yet.
there.
No,
Yeah.
Gordo,
Gordo,
you
yeah.
sitting
Yeah,
there right
Gordo.
now in the future,
Do
listening,
it.
alone,
Also,
editing. I'm thinking about you.